Alone at night, a woman walks along a busy road in Adelaide, South Australia. She's deep in thought. It hasn't been a good week for Maya Jakic. She's spotted by a man driving past, Mark Erin Rust. Short, pudgy, and with a sex pest's habit of dropping his trousers in front of women.
He would expose himself to young girls, flash his genitalia at them.
But then slowly and surely, it escalates to much more intimidating acts.
He would get his sexual kicks from preying upon women. He was always on the lookout for a woman on her own.
How much danger was Maya Jakic facing as she walked alone that night, oblivious to what was going on inside the mind of a serial killer? Mark Erin Rust is one of the most reviled men in South Australia.
Mark Rust began his life as a sex pest, elevated himself to a predator, and then became a serial killer.
He would rape, he would kill. His victims, always women.
They're clearly disposable to him. They're there for contempt, to be used and discarded.
He'd already murdered once when he targeted a vulnerable Japanese student.
And when asked by an Adelaide psychologist why did he kill Magumi, he simply replied, because I did.
What or who would stop Mark Erin Rust? A killer brazen enough to report his own crime to the police.
Yeah, there's someone hanging around the old Paynham police station. Seems to be trying to break in there, I think.
Mark Rust's at first irritating perversion was just the beginning of 30 years of escalating violence against women. With Rust, one thing always leads to another.
Mark Rust is a man whose violence began very early in life because it was untreated, because it was not seen by authorities, because it was ignored by those in power. It escalated and worsened to the point where he became a remorseless killer.
There was no way Maya Jakic could know about Rust's sordid life the night that she unwillingly encounters him.
Maya was walking along a road in Paynham, northeast of the city, one night, and at the time Rust was a taxi driver. He was driving around looking for a fare to pick up. He saw Maya, pulled up close to her, still running, and said, "How about a lift?" Maya dismissed him.
Perhaps she feels safe. There were lots of cars on the road. Surely this little man was no threat. Either way, Maya was in no mood for small talk.
Maya ignored him and continued to walk on.
His rejection by a complete stranger would have been something that Rust was used to, but as so often happened, he was totally enraged.
Rust drove the taxi past her, pulled up, got out, and went back to his favourite tactic. As the attractive young woman walked past him, he flashed her. This is something that had happened hundreds of thousands of times in Rust's life. He was expecting the usual sick thrill of Maya being repulsed by what he did. But Maya was a firecracker. She was a tough woman, no mood to suffer fools. So Maya looked at his shriveled genitalia and laughed.
How would Rust respond to Maya's laughter? He'd never physically assaulted a woman on the street. He lunges towards her.
The intention of grabbing her was just to have sex with her.
Later that night, an anonymous call is made to the emergency services in Adelaide. A man has sighted a woman seemingly motionless in the grounds of a disused police station.
There seems to be a body of some sort in the bushes there, I'm not too sure.
The voice belongs to Mark Rust, a man who no woman would want to meet on a dark night if they knew how dangerous he was. Lurking deep and undiscovered inside Rust's mental and physical makeup, a medical disorder.
One of the points that is made is that he suffered from something called Klinefelter syndrome. Now, this is an extra X chromosome on a boy. So normally a boy have an X and a Y chromosome. This is XXY.
The physical characteristics caused by Klinefelter syndrome would make a young man very self-conscious. As well as shrunken genitalia, Rust would have had rounded hips, stunted growth, and an inability to reach sexual satisfaction when he wanted to. It was during these teenage years, when the symptoms would be most obvious, that Rust is first arrested and charged with indecency offences.
He seemed to be in a state of almost permanent sexual need, but wasn't necessarily able to get sexually aroused when he needed to.
Rather than hide his condition away, Rust flaunts it.
Masturbating in public or flashing people or exposing himself is his way of saying, this is who I am, like it or not.
It is now the late 70s that Mark Rust's journey to becoming a serial killer begins in Whyalla, South Australia. There, he lives parallel existences. There is Mark Rust, the sex pest.
At the age of 13, he started following pretty girls around town, fantasizing about them.
And there is Mark Rust, the apparently normal teenager, but never truly far from the surface, the menacing misogynist.
So Rust starts to go out on dates. He starts to go out with girls, he has relationships, one after the other. The difference is that when they end, Mark Rust starts to hate these girls.
Right there we see a decision to act upon his impulses. It's a far cry from adolescent fantasizing about a woman to actually physically following them, which is a very menacing thing to do, and a measure of the extent to which he was able to avoid empathizing with his victims.
It is one thing to seek gratification by menacing sexual behaviour, but it's another to gain pleasure from the pain inflicted on Rust's victims. That was his modus operandi.
Very quickly he became obsessed not only with the sexual thrill, but with the revulsion thrill. It was a 1-2 punch for him.
This distinction would offer an ominous insight into Rust's motivation.
The experts at the Royal Adelaide Hospital who later interviewed Rust said that apparently he gained great pleasure from the reaction of the women that he exposed himself to, again indicating his lack of empathy with their feelings and in fact deriving pleasure from the shocked, horrified reaction that he created in them.
And to get that pained reaction as a man in his 20s now in Adelaide, Rust escalates his indecency. It's as if he's proud of his physical deficiencies. This was the history of the man who had spotted Maya Jakic when working his taxi route in Adelaide. The woman, about to be his prey, was herself not in a good place mentally.
Maya Jakic was not a happy woman. She suffered from bulimia, an eating disorder, and she had a terrible, volatile relationship with her parents. In fact, one day after a blazing row, she moved out. She moved to Glenelg and lived by the beach in Adelaide.
Maya, diminutive but tough, got through the days after leaving her mother's home any way she could.
It's not a cheap place to live, and it appears that Maya may have had to sleep rough at times. Witnesses saw near a service station, a campfire, bedclothes, pillows. It seems that she was living there out in the open air.
Alone, vulnerable, and in clear line of sight of Mark Erin Rust. During a career as a sex offender, he has escalated his behaviour. He's indecently exposed himself, committed public sex acts on himself. How far will he go that night on a busy road in Adelaide, South Australia? As night falls in the city, a woman alone is targeted by a sex pest. Maya Jakic has responded to Mark Rust's latest incident of indecent exposure by bursting into laughter. How much danger was she in? Was it to be her last laugh? As a regular user of the Paynham Road in this part of the city, Rust, the taxi driver, will have known that the police station there and the patrol HQ next door were now closed. There were no security cameras. Its grounds had become overgrown. Plenty of dark, shady areas hidden from view of those driving by. He grabs Maya, probably stifling her cries by putting his strong arm over her mouth. Rust is strong enough to overpower Maya. He pulls her into the overgrown police station grounds. Until this moment, his sex crimes have not involved physical assault. He tries to rape Maya.
Again, the urge to perform was there, but he was unable to do anything effective about it.
Rust was furious. From the age of 13, one offence had led to a more serious offence, from flashing to public masturbation. Then, menacingly following young girls before carrying out his squalid offences. They were his prey, he the predator. He would choose carefully his moment before offending. With Maya, he's taken the next step up his escalating scale of violent sexual crime. He's attacked. As he pins the terrified Maya to the ground, she unable to scream, he unable to rape her, the sex pest Rust chooses to get his thrills in the worst way imaginable.
Rust flipped from being a pest to being a killer. Rust attacked Maya, set upon her, killed her, and then dumped her body next to a disused police station, covered it over with leaves and branches, and left it there.
With Maya, Rust's journey from pervert sex pest to killer is complete. He would later confirm he got a kick out of it.
When asked by an Adelaide psychologist why did he kill, he simply replied, because I did.
Coldly discarded under leaves in the grounds of the disused police station, how long would the body of Maya Jakic lie undiscovered? The way the mind of Mark Erin Rust worked dictated the next chapter of his ugly story. Mark Rust has been assessed by psychiatrists at length and on many occasions. Some believe part of his motivation is a desire to repulse by using the body that he feels is deformed. He gets pleasure from shocking people. It's been speculated that by hiding Maya's body, he has prevented himself from gaining pleasure, the satisfaction at the revulsion of his actions. Perhaps that's why he takes the next bizarre step. He called in the crime himself.
Rust was denied his usual thrill of someone being repulsed by what he'd done. And still craving that, he had to find a way to achieve that goal also. And so he started trying to make contact with the authorities to have them find Maya's body.
Rust walked to a nearby phone booth. Shortly after killing Maya, he made the first of 2 phone calls.
I just walked past the old Paynham police station. There seems to be a body of some sort in the bushes there, I'm not too sure.
He would contact police anonymously via the Crime Stoppers number, calling in, telling them to look for a body.
But there are other possibilities to explain his motivation for calling the police. Is he showing off?
One can easily speculate that he was toying with the police, saying that I've left this body underneath your noses. And to leave the body near kind of 2 police buildings is in and of itself very telling. This is somebody that either wants to get caught or wants to show that he's fearless, feels that he can never get caught perhaps.
Officers duly went to the scene. Was Rust observing them? We may never know. But if he's watching them, awaiting a thrill on seeing their reaction when discovering Maya's body, he's going to be disappointed. Her body went undiscovered.
There seems to be a body of some sort in the bushes there, I'm not too sure.
And in what can only be described as Keystone Cops black humour, multiple attempts were made by police to find a decaying body by one of their own police stations, unsuccessfully.
He tries another means of getting the authorities to find Maya's body. Having just killed half an hour before, he calmly drives to the Royal Adelaide Hospital. From a phone booth there, he calls the ambulance service.
I don't know, I can vaguely see him. He's got a flashlight flashing around the place.
Inside or?
In and around the place.
With such a vague, anonymous call, nothing is done. Tragically, Maya's body lies decaying in the grounds of the former police station for days. Frustrated that his behaviour has gone unrecognised, Rust tries again to tell the police where to find Maya's remains.
Time and again, Rust would contact the police, leave them some sort of anonymous message. At one point, he even tucked a note up underneath the windscreen wiper of a patrol car. Badly phrased grammar saying, "There's a body next to the police station, you should go find it."
Rust has some nerve. In the days following the murder of Maya, he's regularly on Paynham Road. He could have been spotted by those driving or walking past. But the exhibitionist was determined to milk his murderous moment.
He actually returned to the scene of where he left the body for about 5 days before leaving the note there. So there was clearly a fascination with him for what he had done, coming back and forth and revisiting it. And then this culminating in what was in effect a confession, a note saying, "This is what I did, this is what you'll find," without giving his name, of course.
The note read, "There's a dead girl's body in the shrubs of the grounds near the main road of the Paynham police station. This is no joke. Take a good look."
The note would do its job. It's still impossible to say if Rust was cruising by, observing as patrol officers returned to the disused police buildings. Detectives believe he almost certainly was watching.
That note sent the rookie patrol officers there. That note caused Maya's body to be found. The entire city of Adelaide was horrified by the discovery of Maya Jakic. He didn't have just one person horrified by what he'd done. He had a city now. Feeding off that emotion was like a drug for him. He was sated for a very, very long period of time. But unfortunately, it didn't last forever, and 3 more women were going to pay.
Police quickly formed the opinion that Maya's attacker had been sexually motivated, but they did not link her murder with Mark Aaron Rust, the sex pest. He was in the clear, still driving his cab, still on the prowl.
Horrifyingly, nothing happened to Rust at that time. Rust wasn't caught. Rust wasn't even thought about as being in conjunction anywhere near Maya Jakic. Because again, though police knew about Mark Rust, he was a pest. He was that weird little monotone gnome-looking guy that flashed people. He was the taxi driver that was a little bit handy. He wasn't a killer. Police never stopped and turned their minds to the thought that this man's behaviour, which had been escalating since he was 13 years old, a clear pattern of worsening crime, might have taken the next logical, horrendous step.
Nothing was stopping Rust. He had exposed himself as a teenager. He had committed various lurid and obscene acts in front of women. He had even committed murder. Virtually all of his victims were women, and he cared nothing for their feelings.
A misogynist murderer is at large in Adelaide. Sex-obsessed despite his physical failings, he spots a woman at a bus stop. He sizes her up, a possible target. What's on his mind? He drives by, considering his options. Will he parade himself to shock or repulse? Does he have rape on his mind? Or has his offending threshold reached a point where only murder gives him the thrills that he craves? The young woman is oblivious to the threat posed by Mark Rust. Now he has killed, is Mark Aaron Rust about to kill again? Mark Rust is cruising Adelaide in his taxi, the perfect cover as he looks for the kind of thrills he's been getting from abusing women since he was a teenager. To Rust, a woman alone is a target. Amongst his favourite attack zones, bus stops, there he is spotted as prey. Framed against the neon-lit shelter, the young woman can be seen from hundreds of yards away as Rust drives his cab. He might turn off the main road, weighing up whether it's too late to pounce, too many witnesses. In the distance, the girl sees her bus. She has no idea she's being observed, stalked, For her, another routine trip. For Rust, an opportunity. A typical episode of Rust's abusive life. This time he decides it is too obvious. He can walk away, come back another day. Which he will, time and again. In the months following his murder of Maya Jakic, he's up to his old habits.
Stopping near bus stops, flashing people, following young women around, making lewd comments, or grunting in his characteristic monotone as they walk past. He just became a serial pest, someone that the authorities may have known about, but didn't consider to be a threat.
Nowhere in Greater Adelaide was a woman safe. Out there, at any minute, he might attack. One girl at a bus stop had been lucky. Another was not.
He exposed himself to a woman, masturbated in front of her, and it must have been an appalling thing to witness.
Was his behaviour an indicator to police that he could be Maya Jakic's killer? He was considered, but not seriously.
That's just Mark Rust. He might do a petty crime here or there and he might flash at you, but he's nothing to worry about. He's nothing serious.
But Rust was something serious. He'd been thrilled, excited, satisfied by killing Maya Jakic, but his warped sexual urges could not be kept in check now that he had murdered. Police knew Maya Jakic's killer was somewhere out there, but they did not have a single suspect, which allowed Rust to continue to go about his business. How would police eventually uncover the truth about Mark Rust? Though it would unravel too late to save more from becoming a victim of Mark Rust, indicators were emerging about his personality which police would one day find useful when trying to track down a serial killer. Evidence came from inside prison. Rust had been convicted for what some considered minor sexual deviancy, but his most severe sentence came in 1993, and it was for a completely different type of crime altogether.
His first time in prison was for arson. He caused some $500,000 worth of damage to a building in the Kensington area of Adelaide.
When inside, he wrote letters to his family, mostly to a brother called Stephen. The letters would one day offer an important insight into the mind of Mark Rust. By being sent to prison, he's brought more shame on his family. He has a record over decades of perverted, sordid offences targeting women. Does he show some sort of remorse in the letters?
He makes a point of really kind of minimizing it. He says, you know what, it's just going to upset you, don't worry about it, let's talk about something else. There's a real sense that he hasn't really taken on board the enormity of the pain that he's caused.
That is totally self-centered. In about 20 lines, he's used the word I think 14 times, and there is not a word of sympathy for his victims. It is all I. Mark Rust is all that matters in this document.
Rust's words had exposed the mind of a man who will always be a danger.
This is the mind of a man who may never be capable of empathizing with another person, and certainly not a woman, for the rest of his life.
The letters would one day also offer forensic investigators a telling piece of evidence against Rust.
This letter is actually very important because it's the one that is used to compare to the note that was found on the car, basically alerting the police to what had happened.
But that chapter of investigation into Mark Rust was still to be written. Having served his time for arson, Rust was released from prison. One evening, working again as a cab driver, he spots his latest target.
Just before his second most infamous crime, Rust was looking for another victim. He was back on the streets and he needed a fix. There was a young woman on Goodwood Road who'd pulled up in her car to use an ATM. Rust jumped out, flashed her, and tried his damnedest to sexually assault her. By whatever providence there is, this young woman managed to make it back into her car, lock the door, reverse back at high speed and get away from him.
Not unnaturally, the young woman was deeply traumatized.
Yet more evidence of a man who would act upon his urges oblivious to the distress of his victim.
She went straight home to her partner. They told the police. The police were on the hunt straight away for this person.
At this point in the Mark Rust story, however, police did not know what he was capable of. The attack on the woman had been physical, not the style that had been associated with Rust.
Nobody stopped to think that it might have been Rust because it didn't fit his MO. Rust, of course, flashed people as they walked past. He might follow them for a little while, but he didn't do things like that. So Rust wasn't looked at again. Even though this man is fresh out of prison, with a history as long as your arm of escalating sexual offending, still nobody thinks to look at him. The South Australian Police Department does not consider this man a threat.
But he was a threat. The killer remained on the streets, worked his taxi trade, picking up women who were on their own whenever he could. His mind in the same sick, warped state which had motivated decades of sex crimes. The victim of his latest attack had been lucky to escape. He would not take long before deciding to attack again.
Having had his intentions with that young woman frustrated, having missed out again on that thrill, Rust finds Magumi Suzuki.
Magumi Suzuki is a student on the night of August 3rd, 2001. Nearly 5,000 miles from home, the Japanese student bought a SIM card for her phone from an Adelaide service station. She is oblivious to the danger that she's in as Rust comes across her.
For Rust, Magumi was a perfect victim. She was a woman alone. She was comfortable in her surroundings. There was nothing to be frightened of. This was her new city.
Magumi was a popular student and probably would have felt very secure. She's a young woman. She's in a country she feels confident in and comfortable in. There's no reason to assume she would have felt wary of anyone around her.
But Magumi had never come across the darkness of a mind like Rust's. Her world was one of late nights at bars, parties, friends. She had become close with a young South Australian.
They'd met in Tokyo, and he was a way of getting into the Adelaide life for her.
This is a young woman who's in a new country, so having someone to reach out to who is there from her past would probably be a source of comfort.
So she'd made it from her favourite shopping mall, Rundle, across to Goodwood Road.
All we know is that Magumi went across Goodwood Road at one point to use the facilities at a petrol station.
It wasn't busy around the service station where Magumi bought her SIM card, which made it easier for him to spot the young woman. Magumi, alone, tried to call her young friend 12 times, but he wasn't picking up. She headed for a ride home on a bus. Having been in Adelaide for nearly a year, Magumi had become familiar with the sights and the sounds of a city in which she felt safe. She said as much to her parents back home, who she regularly called.
As she stood at the bus stop, Magumi wouldn't have been worried. There would have been no sense of anxiety. I mean, in the end, Adelaide had become a home away from home. What was there to worry about?
Mark Rust was just a few menacing feet away as Magumi looked down the road to see if a bus was coming. Magumi Suzuki has decided to go back to her student digs. She's not aware that Mark Rust has made her his latest target. He pulls her from the nearby bus stop.
For whatever reason, likely sexually, he attacked Magumi.
He drags Magumi to waste ground beyond the service station.
He holds her down to rape her.
It's not known if he succeeds, but Magumi's survival is in the balance. Based partly on snippets of information gleaned later from cellmates and on his modus operandi, investigators have pieced together what happened next.
Says to Magumi, "Don't look at me." Now she mishears and turns around and does look at him, and it's at that point that he decides to kill her.
Did Magumi laugh at him? Did she react naively? Did she scream? And whatever happened sparked him over that same line as it did with Maya.
Rust's behaviour is remorseless, without mercy.
All we know is that Rust picked up a rock and beat her to death.
Magumi Suzuki is probably unconscious as Rust delivers the fatal blow.
He's a cold-hearted serial killer.
Rust's contempt for his victim is compounded by what he does next.
Rust murdered Magumi Suzuki and dumped her body in an industrial bin behind a set of shops.
Magumi's body is left undiscovered. Her violent death was to be followed by an ignominious trail of events. For her family in Japan, months of mystery. Where had she gone? Was she somewhere in Adelaide having skipped college? At her university, volunteers manned search parties. Her student friends walked the streets, visited her favourite haunts.
When Magumi vanished, police looked everywhere for her. They made public appeals for her to turn herself in. There were thoughts that maybe she had run away with a man, that maybe she was in hiding, that she was worried she'd ashamed her parents. And so there was a lot of hope out there that maybe she was still alive. There were sightings reported of her running around. People that looked like her, people that were close enough.
Rust's contemptuous decision to dispose of her body in a rubbish bin added a grotesque, demeaning footnote to the life story of Magumi Suzuki.
This is honestly one of the more horrific things that I've heard in my career. Magumi's body remained in that industrial bin unfound and was taken to the major dump outside of Adelaide. It would be many, many months before police realised they needed to look for her there. And then it was a matter of volunteers and police officers digging through hundreds of thousands of tonnes of garbage, section by section, to find her remains.
In what would later become hugely important to the case against him, he did something else. Rust stole an item from Magumi's bag.
Rust chose to take a CD player.
He regarded it as a trophy. What part would it eventually play in his undoing? For now, with Magumi's body undiscovered, Rust was free to prowl the streets, to work his taxi rounds, and to attack again.
The problem with serial killers is that nobody knows when they'll stop. How many are they going to kill? Every serial killer starts with their first victim, then they stop, and then they pick up again. So who knew if Magumi was the last?
Another woman was to come face to face with Rust. It was this next attack which was to change the police's view of the serial sex pest.
And so Rust went on the hunt one more time. He went back to the Payneham area, Kensington Road, found a woman who was working late in a business. Rust came in wearing a mask, cut the power, cut the phone lines, and told her to get down and take off her skirt. She knew he had a knife, and she felt the best way of keeping herself alive was to submit. That takes, for me, indescribable bravery and strength of will to be able to survive that experience. Because she had managed to convince his trollish little mind that she was into it, that she was a willing participant in his sick game, he considered it sex, and so he let her live. That woman so narrowly avoided being the third person killed by Mark Rust.
She also kick-started the case against her attacker.
His latest victim was not only brave, but she was resourceful. She managed to get a good look at the car, and she managed to remember some of the numbers in the license plate.
When she reported her assault, one of those number plates led police straight to Rust. And so for the first time, South Australian police paid attention to Rust, and they realised, oh, here he is, he's progressed from a flasher to a rapist. Maybe we should arrest him. And so Rust was arrested for the sexual assault of that woman, for the rape of that woman.
At last, police were getting serious about Mark Rust, not a sex pest, a sexual predator. But he was still not suspected of the murder of either Maya Jakic or Magumi Suzuki. Detectives in the Maya investigation decided on a new approach. They released the audio of the mysterious phone calls made on the night that she had been killed.
There seems to be a body of some sort in the bushes there, I'm not too sure.
Those phone calls were the way that the police finally managed to track him down.
After working for years abroad, Rust's brother had returned to Australia. He watched the news, heard the recordings.
Upon hearing this, Mark's brother, Stephen, gives up his brother to the police.
Stephen Rust tells police that he thinks the man who had called from this phone box was his brother. Rust, by now, is behind bars for the rape of the woman who had seen his number plate. And there, another crucial piece of evidence would be found in the case against him.
He was taken to the Port Augusta prison, which is far north of the city. When you go to Port Augusta prison, you're allowed to take a few personal effects with you, given that you're going to be so far away from friends and family. Rust chose to take a CD player. It wasn't his, it was Magumi's. It was his trophy. And so while the public of South Australia, the media of South Australia, Magumi's parents, police, all consider Magumi to be a missing person, are trying to find her, are making public pleas for her to let people know where she is, thinking that maybe she's still alive. Rust is lying in his bunk in Port Augusta prison with headphones on, listening to music on his victim's CD player.
Police were still in the dark about Rust's attack on Magumi. They remained focused on linking Rust to the murder of Maya Jakic and felt that recognition of his voice on the emergency service calls was not enough to prosecute. They needed more, and they were to get it from an informant. Rust, the man who liked to repulse and shock, couldn't keep his mouth shut about his crimes. A fellow prisoner reported the conversations that he'd had with Rust.
His cellmate was as appalled as anyone and went straight to the police to tell them.
Rust was quite prepared to brag about anything to do with Magumi Suzuki. He was proud of what he'd done, because now it was time for everyone to be revolted by him, well and truly.
And then when they went to his cell, they found Magumi's CD, the one that Rust claimed was his own.
Could police finally link the murder of Maya Jakic with the disappearance of Magumi Suzuki? On it, a serial number, one Magumi's parents had a record of back in Tokyo.
And that was the serial number of the CD that Magumi had bought for herself. The case against him was building up.
Detectives get handwriting experts to compare the writing on Rust's letters with that on the note left on a police car after Maya's death. The writing is clearly from the same man. Despite at first denying involvement, he eventually confessed to killing both women.
Maya was the straw that broke the camel's back and transformed Rust from a sexual pest into a sexual killer.
For those following the story, Rust's eventual confession was no surprise. He enjoyed his moment in the spotlight.
This was getting every pretty girl in Adelaide, every pretty girl in South Australia to be horrified by him all at once. Look what I did. I didn't just flash you, I killed you. I didn't just follow you around, I raped you. It was the ultimate sick thrill for him. It was the ultimate public exposure.
Rust himself confirmed it was 2 victims down, but more would have followed.
Rust actually admitted that he would have killed again and again. If he hadn't been stopped, he would have killed even more women.
He killed Maya because it was a thrill. He killed Magumi because he could. What would be his reason next time? The truth was he didn't need a reason. He had the taste for it now. He was a serial killer, just waiting for the next victim to come along.
Magumi's family and the whole of Japan were devastated. A young woman on an adventure in Australia, a life of hope and happiness, ended by Mark Rust.
You send your child out into the world and you expect them to have a good life. You want them to get a good education, to make something of themselves. You want them to be happy. Magumi's parents sent her to Adelaide because they thought that would be the best place for her to get a great start in life. It did the exact opposite. It took away her life.
Rust would eventually receive the most severe sentence possible for the murder of the 2 women.
Rust was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms with no parole. It's very unusual in South Australia. And he was emotionless. He was absolutely implacable. He was listening as if he was listening to a TV show. There was nothing there.
He also received 12 years for the rape of the woman who was lucky to escape with her life. But the Rust story was to take another twist in 2015, when he appealed against his original sentence. He wants to know if he ever will have the chance of parole.
The point about the sentence is that it doesn't give Rust very much hope that he'll ever be released.
He wants a sense of when things will end. And I think for a lot of prisoners, it's that uncertainty, more so than the amount of years, it's more difficult to live with.
But the hearings at the court suggest that Rust may never get his wish.
The hearings that have been held have heard that Rust is known for attacking prison guards, that he's known for being belligerent and violent inside the prison, and claims that he's had privileges denied. Now, Rust denies all of this. He says that he's undertaken victim empathy courses, that he now has insight into his offending behaviour. He wants to rehabilitate, get out of prison and make something of himself before it's too late. I think one of the most salient comments came from the judge that heard the most recent application. She said that she's read absolutely nothing in all the volumes of reports that have been put before her that give her any hope that Mark Rust is capable of changing.
Justice Anne Vanstone has actually speculated that it is unlikely that the original psychiatrist will change his opinion on the report.
I think she realised that the woman in Payneham was lucky to escape with her life. I think she realised that the young woman at the ATM was lucky to escape any form of assault. And I think she realised that the next person that Rust encountered was going to die even more viciously and even more horrifically than Magumi or Maya.
And if eventually Rust is denied his request to one day be eligible for parole, it won't surprise or disappoint psychologists.
One of the things that came across very strongly is how he minimized what he'd done. He minimized the effect of exposure on women. He minimized the effect that it had on his family. He minimized the effect that it had on his victims. And given the letters that he sent through to his brother afterwards, after the crime, it seems like it's still something in his mind that perhaps wasn't that big of a deal. And that perhaps is one of the scariest things about him.
A forest can be forbidding, a place of secrets, of danger, a place to hide. The Ardennes on the French-Belgian border offers perfect territory for a husband and wife team intent on murder. First, they prowl towns nearby, then they disappear into the dark forest with their victims. One day, pregnant, the woman, Monique Olivier, sees a young girl, beckons her over.
She asks for this girl's help. She says, "I'm pregnant and I'm not feeling well. Can you help me? Can you come with me?"
A year later, the scene is repeated in another town. Monique Olivier's baby is now born, but that has not curbed the need to kill. The husband and wife team are back on the prowl. Another girl comes into view of Olivier and her husband, the killer, Michel Fernay.
She'd have thought nothing of approaching the car. There was a man, a woman and a little child, so why would she be frightened?
None of the victims would have thought that they were being lured into a trap.
But the man in this picture is quite simply a monster, like few others. A child killer.
Will anyone notice? Will the little girl realise the danger she is in and run? Or is she about to become the latest to suffer at the hands of Michel Fernay and Monique Olivier? Before the so-called French Diabolical Alliance kill again, can anyone get inside the mind of a serial killer? Isabelle Laville is just 17 as she returns from college. A car pulls up and a woman asks for directions to a fuel station.
We have to speculate precisely what happens that day, but there's enough to suggest that Isabelle is not suspicious. There is a man and a woman in the car, a couple who need her help.
Monique is actually central to Michel's ambitions. Very few women are going to get into a car of a strange man that they see.
She's very out of her comfort zone. Up until now, people have only ever been kind to her and wanted to help. Her parents, teachers, school friends.
Within seconds, she has been bundled into the back of the vehicle owned by Monique Olivier and Michel Fernay. On being reported missing, police suspect she's been abducted by a French serial killer later identified as Émile Louis. They have his description, warning people to look out for him. He was operating in the same region where Isabelle has gone missing. But police are wrong. Émile Louis has not abducted Isabelle.
The French police were incredibly unlucky that they had another series of abductions and murders happening in the same region of France at the same time. That's unprecedented.
Isabelle will never be seen alive again. 19 years will pass before her body is found at the bottom of a well in a tiny French village near Auxerre. Isabelle had become the first victim of the ogre of the Ardennes, Michel Fernay, and his wife. Fernay's crimes are amongst the worst France has ever suffered.
He's killed at least 8 young girls and women, but it's likely to be more.
Their crimes are beyond belief. It left the country wondering how it could have produced such monsters.
When Olivier has seduced the girls into trusting her, Fernay attacks. He rapes, then kills. Some victims as young as 12 and 13, lured into a trap by the couple who exploit the innocence and goodwill of children.
I think Michel Fernay and Monique Olivier played on the fact that children want to help. They want to be seen to be helping people, and young people want to be seen to be public-spirited.
We're socialized into trusting women more. We're socialized into believing what they say a lot more. So the fact that Monique is there and offering assistance or asking for help is key to Michel being able to enact the brutal rapes and murders that he does.
Fernay and Olivier will carry out a series of murders over an 18-year period, using at times their own baby boy to put their victims at ease. They're a husband and wife murder team who left an entire nation in shock. Fernay's perverted sexual behavior begins in the 60s.
Michel Fernay first comes to the attention of the police when he's about 24.
He's arrested for indecently assaulting a little girl. He's interviewed by a psychiatrist who concludes that he can be treated to prevent him offending again.
That psychiatrist couldn't have been more wrong.
Released after 6 years inside, a tawdry 20 years follow as Fernay commits sex crime after sex crime. He's charged and convicted 13 times.
He is every woman's worst nightmare.
And he is a man who coldly calculates that he will need a woman by his side to commit the crimes that he's planning.
Michel Fernay hatched upon their MO as a way of preventing being caught, because you've got to remember he was previously caught for offences when he acted on his own. So what we know about criminals, and particularly sex offenders, is they introduce learnt behaviour into the way in which they offend. And when you're caught in a particular way, often you try to prevent that happening again.
It is during and immediately after one of his extended stays in prison that the key cast of Fernay's degenerate life story begins to assemble. It is a tale of a secret stash of buried gold, a gathering of unlikely partners in crime, a bitter wife who wants her first husband dead, and of the unwitting innocents that she would lure to their deaths. Fernay's icebreaker, his means of creating the diabolical alliance with the gangster's mole that is Monique Olivier, is an advertisement.
He puts an ad in a newspaper saying, listen, I'm a prisoner, I'm lonely, I'm reaching out to any woman that wants a relationship with me. And lo and behold, he meets Monique Olivier.
Its words, when translated, read, "A prisoner would like to exchange letters with a woman of any age, so he can overcome loneliness." Monique seems drawn to men in jail. Her first husband was in prison, and now the man who would be her next husband.
For some women, it's a sense of low self-esteem. They feel that that's all they deserve. For others, it's a sense of danger.
I think there are particular types of people, in some cases women, that are attracted to men that are in prison. They're attracted to the danger that they represent and the risk that they represent.
Needless to say, the fact that this woman was so enticed by someone like this shows that there was things going on in her personality, in her emotional state, that were very lacking.
The relationship which follows is obsessive. Whilst Fernay is in prison, the couple exchange intense letters.
These were passionate letters. She was infatuated.
So when the letters between them are found and analysed, they actually display a lot of passion, a lot of sexual passion, a lot of emotional connection.
She had been married twice before. In one relationship, she was physically abused, and in a letter from Fernay, he makes Monique a promise about Mark, the abusive husband. "I will make them atone for their crimes," he says. "I also know that I will kill Mark." And he tells Olivier what he wants in return.
Monique is married to one of the men her husband knows from prison, and she hates him. So she enters into a pact with Fernay. You kill my husband, and I'll owe you.
In return, Michel asks that Monique will help him find young women to abuse.
The couple agree to marry. The precise deal struck, in sickening detail, involves Monique helping entice virgins into Fernay's grasp. Shortly after his release, they get together.
So he moves in with Monique, they marry, and they move to the Auxerre area of France. At this stage, Monique is still expecting Fernay to fulfill his promise to kill her first husband. But Fernay has other plans.
Those plans include abduction, rape, and murder. Shortly after arriving in the Auxerre region, the couple carry out the first murder of Isabelle Laville. Evidence would later emerge that when having sex, Monique would play the role of the little girl that she'd seen killed. She would act out what they had done.
They're both getting a sexual high off of this, off of the violence and the murder that they're enacting, and actually they're role-playing it later on in the privacy of their own bedroom.
This sort of couples in it together is not as uncommon as we would like to think. Bonnie and Clyde, Myra Hindley and Anne Brady, Fred and Rosemary West.
There's a sense of us against them, and this is very much is what's happening. Add into the mix the sexual element, the sexual high that they're getting, and the two of them are very much in a world of their own.
They seem to have all provided each other with some sort of evil reinforcement. Kept apart, they might never have killed.
The couple's next murder will come after an almost unbelievable yet true story of a hunt for buried treasure. When in prison, Fernay had befriended a fellow prisoner, Jean-Pierre Elgouache. His wife is called Farida. She soon joins the cast of Fernay's ugly story.
He had heard from Jean-Pierre that a fortune in gold coins had been stashed in a forest north of Paris. It was the proceeds of bank robberies. And he wondered if Farida knew where the stash might be.
Amongst her underworld friends is one of the bank robbers involved in burying the gold. Fernay and Monique Olivier scheme their way into Farida's life.
An alliance was formed between the three, Fernay and the two women. They would share the proceeds.
Fernay sees this as a turning point because somewhere out there is buried treasure, life-changing money.
Farida is no more than a stooge, needed to help solve the mystery of the location of the gold, but for nothing more. She could have no idea that her life was in danger if the trio actually did track down the bullion.
They are partners in crime at this point. They have a shared cause to find this gold.
She can help him get rich quick. Farida is a means to an end.
He is utterly devoid of emotion in his crimes. One psychiatric examination concludes using that exact word. He is devoid, it says, of human feelings. Farida isn't an equal partner.
She and Fernay spend days searching an area of the national park north of Paris. Will they find it? And what will Farida's fate be if they do? In the late 80s, the timeline of terror that Michel Fernay and his wife Monique Olivier will unleash upon northern France and Belgium is in its infancy. They had killed once, but their minds were now on getting rich, quick. Together with Farida, they search near a graveyard in a wood near Paris.
Incredibly, Farida and Fernay find the treasure.
She actually leads them to the gold.
What are the chances? But the moment the young woman and Fernay find the gold coins, Fernay's life does indeed change as he hoped it would.
But what's clear is that Michel Fernay was intent from the beginning on keeping that for himself.
The gold discovered, the Diabolical Alliance have another victim in their sights. The recovered cache of ingots is hard to sell. 2 years pass before Fernay and Farida find a buyer in Brussels. It's believed they raise 1.2 million francs, the equivalent of nearly £1 million today. Fernay and Monique journey north and buy a castle, Château Sautou, near Charleville-Mézières, in the Ardennes region bordering Belgium.
If you were to pick a home which is also a hideout, somewhere where screams can't be heard, where you could come, you could go, you wouldn't be spotted, where you might even bury bodies, well, this was the place.
The couple are regularly in contact with Farida. They still have her share of the proceeds. A meeting is arranged, and the three drive into the Ardennes forest.
Up until the point when she's in the car, everything he said he's going to do, he has, as has his wife, which is probably giving her a sense of security. False sense of security, of course.
What happens next is disputed, but what investigators believe took place has been partially corroborated by the other woman in the car, Monique Olivier.
Monique blurted out in a courtroom one day that her husband had sat in the back seat of the car and he'd wrapped a shoelace around Farida's neck.
As he did so, a knife fell from his pocket.
Monique picks it up, hands it to Michel, and he proceeds to kill Farida.
Her body is abandoned by the couple and is still undiscovered, discarded somewhere in the desolate French forest of the Ardennes. Jean-Pierre Elgouache would eventually confront Fernay about both the disappearance of the gold coins and his wife, but Fernay escapes. Elgouache is soon back in prison for an unrelated offence, and Fernay is back on the prowl, having blended into society.
Criminals like Fernay don't carry a sign around their necks saying, "I am a sex attacker" or rapist.
The problem for police and for those who actually knew him is that he appeared normal.
He holds down a job as a handyman and electrician. He's quietly spoken. He's also giving nothing away. He has no friendships outside his marriage.
What made Fernay into the man he became? Michel Fernay claims to be tortured by a fact of his early life: abuse at the hands of his mother.
She sexually abused him, and he holds this up very quickly when he's confronted with the fact that he's a sexual abuser.
But is he telling the truth? Abuse by a mother is not unknown, but it's very rare.
What we do know about sex offenders is some often claim to have been sexually abused when they haven't, and statistically we know that it's not always the case that people that have been sexually abused as children go on to sexually abuse children as adults. So we should be quite sceptical about his claim that he was sexually abused by his mother.
When a child, Fernay lives with a sister in modest surroundings, complaining that he could hear her using a bucket for a toilet and saying this was unbecoming for a woman. It is degrading, he says, and not living up to the image that he has of the perfect woman.
He becomes obsessed with the concept of woman as virgin, pure like the Holy Mary.
The misogyny that he holds for women is couched in this idea that no one can live up to the Virgin Mary, that there's this virgin ideal that no woman can aspire to.
He told investigators that his only regret in life was never having married a virgin.
He actually mentions the fact that he used to watch his sister soil in a bucket, as he calls it, basically in effect go to the bathroom in a bucket, and this revolted him, and this revolted him not just for the act, but the fact that a woman shouldn't do that. Somehow a woman should be beyond anything physical, almost anything human, and so begins his obsession with this idea of virginity and perfection in women.
No female is safe in the company of this man. He's obsessed with woman as sex object. And there's no respect at all with Fernay, none. Just this sort of sense of entitlement that a female is his to use and abuse.
And those females that he most wants to abuse are the ones that Fernay considers most pure.
The profile of his next victim will be the same as his first, a young woman, someone who Fernay may consider is a virgin.
By now, Monique Olivier will do anything for Fernay. He has still to keep his promise and murder her former husband. She does not object. He seems to completely control her life.
Well, there are very good examples of Michel Fernay controlling the way Monique Olivier conducted herself when she was in his company. For example, there's a good example of them going to dinner parties and him not allowing her to speak unless he gave her the permission to.
But there is another reason that she appears willing to be consumed by Fernay's murderous ambitions. She wants a father for her child. Now pregnant by Fernay, she helps him abduct a young student called Fabien Leroy.
The couple see a girl in a supermarket.
Monique, heavily pregnant, asks for help. Wonders if she could accompany her to a hospital. Points to her car.
A pregnancy is just another prop to be used to play the game that they've been playing, this awful, horrible, monstrous game.
Monique Olivier was able to entice and lure the young women into the car. She was the pacifier, but she was also the hook, the element that gave the woman a sense of trust.
Watching in the car at the supermarket, crouched behind the front seat, Michel Fernay.
When she's in the car, we know that Fernay will have subdued her quickly, either by tying a lace or rope around her neck, or by striking her hard enough for her to become instantly disoriented.
Fabien is caught completely off guard.
She's raped, then Fernay shoots her dead. Her body is buried in nearby woods. Yet more evidence of a man who takes his satisfaction and then throws away a person as if she is no more than a discarded wrapping paper.
And throughout the incident, Monique Olivier watching and actually facilitating the girl's rape and murder.
Nobody hears a thing. Her disappearance from the supermarket car park goes unnoticed. No screams of protest, no signs of distress.
All of them went willingly, thinking they were helping people, thinking that they were being public spirited. So I think it would have been a tremendous shock to them realise that they'd been duped into getting into the car and that they were in a very risky situation.
Months pass. The baby is born. Fernay and Olivier appear a perfect couple starting a family. But Fernay's appetite for abduction and rape show no signs of being satisfied. On a train between Paris and Charleville-Mézières, he sits a few feet from a young woman called Jean-Marie Desremaux. They chat. He tells her of his new family. Waiting for him at the station, Monique. Jean-Marie is not aware of any danger. As she travels on the train, glancing out of the window, she could not imagine the man that she was speaking with was a serial killer. Her journey is mundane. The man, no threat. Police have not been warning young women. There's no reason to. Nobody is searching for a male-female abduction team.
When you have a man and a woman that are involved in abductions, then that is a very difficult thing to investigate, because people don't see things that look normal. They don't see things that look like every day. And so they had a perfect cover.
Fernay at this time is beyond suspicion. Detective work in the 80s is antiquated compared with today.
And it was a completely different time in terms of technology, in terms of politics, policing. So where the couple actually lived and their profile made their job much easier.
There was no internet, no instant messaging. Security cameras were very few. Policing was harder.
Fernay continues to chat on the train with Jean-Marie. Talks of offering the young lady a lift home. Suggests that they will need a babysitter. Perhaps she would like to earn a little cash.
Fernay's met at the station by Monique. Well, what could appear more natural?
The young woman would have been completely unaware of the danger she is in.
So he's doing what many serial killers do. He's portraying a normal life while concurrently having this double life that's very dark.
Mums and dads don't attack girls. They care for them. They help them. That's her experience.
He's married. He has a child. He seems like your normal run-of-the-mill neighbor that you'd see. There's nothing that stands out about him.
What will happen to Jean-Marie Desremaux as she walks towards the vehicle with Fernay and Olivier? Can she possibly imagine what is going on inside the mind of a serial killer? Jean-Marie Desremaux, a student, tells Fernay and Olivier that she's expected by friends and asks for a meeting the following day. The couple agree. She can then come with them to see their home and meet the baby, spend some time getting used to him. The happy scene ends at the car park adjacent to the railway station. Before Jean-Marie leaves, it is Monique who makes one final suggestion.
And it's Monique that says, "Hey, would you like a lift home? Don't worry about it, we can take you."
Jean-Marie says no, but as she has promised, she returns the following day. She doesn't intend to stay long with the couple.
Having a couple offer you support, offer you help, ask for assistance, it feels more natural.
As she's driven along the long road approaching the chateau near Sedan in northern France, Jean-Marie is about to discover that the couple are far from what they seem. Fernay suddenly stuns Jean-Marie with an amazing question. He wonders if she's a virgin. He will admit to the conversation when later questioned. The young woman, stunned, says she has a boyfriend and would now like to leave. Fernay will not allow that.
The modus operandi of this couple suggests that Fernay will quickly subdue his victim. He'll render her powerless.
He probably hits her as hard as he can and as quickly as he can. Then his pattern was to gag those that he attacked.
With Olivier watching, their new baby in his crib, Fernay rapes the young woman before strangling her. They load her body into a freezer. Days later, they bury her in the grounds of the chateau. Student friends heard nothing from Jean-Marie for days. It's not like her, and they report her missing. Police launch a search. They begin to suspect that she may have become the latest victim of Émile Louis, the other serial killer on the loose in France at that time. He's usually struck, though, further south. Has he migrated north?
They were working as a couple later on with a child, and that didn't fit the stereotype of what the police would be looking for.
In the confusion created by the fact that France had different serial killers snatching girls and women from the streets, Fernay and Olivier are free to attack again. And to further make it tough for French detectives, the couple leave the country. They move to Belgium, where, incredibly, another serial killer is soon on the loose. Marc Dutroux would later be convicted of killing 6 young girls in the same area that Fernay and Olivier have moved to. The couple, now often travelling between the two countries, continue to look out for young women, possible virgins, who they can entice into their lives, use, abuse, and then discard.
I think that they shared experiences, those experiences of abducting and killing those women, that they both found sexually exciting and were both aroused by. And I think that, in its perverse way, cemented the bond between them.
In a town called Remorse in Belgium, they spot a 12-year-old girl. Her name is Elisabeth Brichet. Fernay and Olivier wait for 3 hours as she plays at a friend's house.
The evidence suggests that Fernay and Olivier had planned this crime to the last detail.
For the couple, Elizabeth presents a new opportunity, and she's only 12.
Michel Fernay and Monique Olivier were a couple acting in unison. They used their own child to present as an everyday couple and to make them above suspicion.
You can imagine little Elizabeth. Here's this poor little baby boy crying his eyes out, and the parents are from out of town.
The level of depravity that these two have in terms of how they try and entice girls is unbelievable. By this point, Monique's had a baby, a little 3-month-old baby, and she uses the baby to give young girls a sense of security to come with her. And this little girl, of course, feels safe. This is a woman with a baby who needs my help. Not only does she feel safe, she probably thinks she's doing the right thing. She's probably been raised to think this is the right thing to do.
Within moments of her coming across Olivier and Fernay, she would have been asked into their vehicle.
As she sat in that car, Elizabeth would have had no sense of fear. I mean, why would she? This was her home. She was with a nice man, his wife, and their little baby. What was there to worry about?
The fate of Elisabeth Brichet was in the hands of a mother and father like no other. One, a serial killer, and the other, a woman who makes his actions possible. What happened to little Elizabeth after she was snatched by France's Diabolical alliance, Fernay and Olivier, confirmed the couple as one of the worst husband and wife killing teams the world has ever known. As ever, Fernay insists that Olivier establish if his victim is a virgin, and then he strikes.
She was raped.
Not only was Monique not bothered by this, but perhaps was getting something from it as well.
In a slight change to their usual routine, Elizabeth is not immediately killed.
Did they offer her food or drink, or keep her bound and gagged? Did Monique console her? Did she have a chance of being spared?
Fernay's behaviour was remorseless. He showed no mercy.
All we know is that she was killed at the chateau.
We don't know how, and we don't know what the final thing was that made Fernay act.
Perhaps fear that Elizabeth would be able to identify him.
Elizabeth's family had to wait 15 years for her body to be found. Her fate had been decided the second that she agreed to help a pregnant woman with a crying child.
He's a cold-hearted serial killer, and she is a monster who helps him.
Throughout this period, they used the grounds of the chateau as a burial ground. Elizabeth's remains were eventually discovered there. Belgian police, working to an early 90s set of investigative and communication standards, did not link what had happened to Elizabeth with what had taken place in France. They were in the dark about the missing 12-year-old.
They had nothing to go on, no descriptions, no immediately obvious pattern, and no bodies had been discovered.
We can be confident that they were not looking for a husband and wife team who kept a small baby with them.
Elizabeth had been snatched just before Christmas. It would be another 11 months before Fernay and Olivier would strike again. They see a girl, Natasha, shopping with her mother. She separates for just a few moments, and Monique slows down in her van to ask for directions, feigns illness.
She asks for this girl's help. She says, "I'm not feeling well. Can you help me? Can you come with me?"
As Natasha shows concern, Fernay snatches her and throws her in the back of the van. She is raped, strangled, and her body abandoned on a beach near Nantes. It is found 3 days later. This time, police believe they have their man, but they're wrong.
This case was complicated by the mistaken arrest of a neighbour, a man who was completely innocent of this crime, but who had linked up with a terrorist group.
He is innocent, but does his next action inadvertently cost the lives of more teenage girls?
He ended up killing himself in prison, so perhaps police thought he was the man.
If that was the view, it would explain why no wide-scale campaign was in action warning women of a serial killer on the loose. It is 1990, and the couple seem to have finished their series of murders. No other disappearances are reported in the Ardennes region until the year 2000. Out of the blue, Fernay says he wants to go hunting for a virgin. Céline Saison, 18 and going home from school, is asked for help by Fernay. He says he's lost, asks the girl to accompany him. Trusting him, she climbs into the vehicle. Fernay immediately locks the doors, tells her that she should now allow him to have sex with him, or he'll throw acid in her face. She has no choice but to submit.
Of course, this child, like so many before her, is bound and raped and killed.
He pushes her to the floor of the van and strangles her using a rope. Later, he will return to the home that the couple are renting in Belgium.
Again, he crosses the border with Monique, disorienting police and aided by how easy it is to travel between the two countries.
When he gets back, he empties the contents of Celine's school bag on the family kitchen table, telling Monique, "I went hunting. I got satisfaction." As their son sleeps, the couple pick through Celine's holiday snaps from America. It was a trophy being paraded for his wife, a prosecuting lawyer would say in court.
Michel Fernay is a man that has very little empathy, very little remorse. He lives his life the way he wants to live his life, and that's quite evident in the way he committed his offences, the fact that he took very little care in disposing of the bodies and left the bodies on property belonging to himself. That tells you an awful lot about his mindset. He was a man that was completely driven by his own needs and doing whatever he felt he could and wanted to do.
Fernay's final victim would be a 13-year-old Asian French girl called Mananya Thumpong that he had stalked in his old hometown of Sedan. He persuades her to come with him in his vehicle and drives deep into the forest, where he rapes and kills her, burying her body nearby. Again, he returns home to Monique, trumpeting his satisfaction at finding another virgin. In 2003, the couple make the mistake which would finally bring an end to the series of murders. In a town called Fernay on the Franco-Belgian border, Fernay rather than Monique approaches a 13-year-old girl called Marie.
He personally approaches her, and now this is unusual. He asks her for directions, and then he actually offers her a lift. When she says no, he tells her off for not being trusting enough. Mary tries to run, but he grabs her and throws her in the back of the van.
They grab this little girl, as they usually do. They bind her like they've always done, put her in the back of a van and start driving off.
This little girl pounds her feet against the back door until it releases and opens.
And eventually breaks open. She falls out of the van onto a road. Thank goodness another motorist sees her.
Fernay and his wife double back.
Presumably to try and pick her up again.
But the Diabolical Alliance lose their nerve when their prey is something more than a defenseless young girl.
The young girl with the motorist are able to get the license plate, and eventually the two are caught.
That little girl so narrowly avoided being his latest victim.
She also kick-started the chain of events which lead to the arrest of the Diabolical Alliance.
The escape of his latest victim marked the beginning of the end. The Belgian police were given rapid assistance from the French about Fernay's past, but it was far from over.
Fernay gives nothing away. It is Monique, mindful of a recent case of a Belgian serial killer, Marc Dutroux, who cracks first. He had killed 6 times, and his wife was prosecuted as an accomplice and given a 30-year jail sentence. Monique became fearful that that would be her fate too.
By the time they're caught, it's very interesting because self-preservation kicks in for both of them. So Monique realizes that very recently another serial killer has been caught and his wife has been given life in prison because she knew about it. So she thinks this is going to be the case with me. So I need to tell them, do you know what? It just wasn't just this one case of abduction. There's been a bunch more. So she gives him up right from the start.
As soon as he's locked up, as soon as he's arrested and charged, she feels that she's in a position to then speak. And I think, in all honesty, she realised that the game was up.
Eventually, Fernay confesses to the murder of 8 girls and young women. The evidence was undoubtedly there to suggest he was their killer, but there are probably more victims to his name.
What of Monique? What does she claim? That she was a victim too. She'd only been following his orders.
I think it's very easy to suggest that Monique Olivier was acting under duress, but I think the facts suggest otherwise. And I think it's quite clear that she played an active part in the abductions and the subsequent murders of the victims, and that she has a deviant sexual interest in children in her own right.
She had so many chances to come clean with what happened, and she was such an integral part to what he was doing that I sincerely doubt that the disparity of power was to the extent that she's saying.
The court did not believe her claims. Meanwhile, Fernay tried all in his power to remain in control.
His behaviour in court was telling. He refuses to go at first, and then when he's forced to, he shows absolutely no interest.
He had to be forced into the dock to listen to the evidence of abuse, rape, and murder. All the time, sitting with his arms folded defiantly, ignoring proceedings, arrogant.
Police are as certain as they can be that Fernay has killed other young women. Monique Olivier even accused him of murdering the family au pair.
Sex offenders tend to be quite prolific in the way in which they offend. And traditionally when they're caught, they only tell you a small percentage of what they've done. So I think it's highly likely that there are other offences, other more serious offences, and potentially other murders that Michel Fernay and Monique Olivier are responsible for.
But Fernay won't give up any information, unless he feels he has no option.
It's quite clear that even after being arrested and spoken to by the police, Michel Fernay wanted to maintain some control and really has only ever spoken about the offences which he clearly knows the police know about. And I think it's highly unlikely that he will speak about other crimes unless the police present him with some strong evidence.
For him it was a joke, and he still won't reveal the whereabouts of some of the bodies of who else he's killed.
He's toying with them, and he's getting that last sense of not just control, but I think being able to inflict pain on people by doing this.
Certainly psychologists are convinced that his arrest meant that lives were saved. More murders would have followed.
He actually admitted that he'd probably have killed again if he hadn't been arrested. Now, this is a serial killer who was caught before he could kill even more women. He'd be killing now if he was free.
In 2004, Michel Fernay was sentenced to life in prison. Monique was given a life sentence with a minimum of 28 years before being considered for parole. The couple had snatched young girls over an 18-year period, using the opportunity of driving between jurisdictions and believing they would never be captured.
Sometimes you come across a case that's just so shocking that it makes you question whether it can possibly be true. And the case of this couple falls directly into that category.
The fact that he's sentenced to life imprisonment and will never be released should be a relief for everybody in France. But ultimately, it should be a sign that everyone gets caught in the end. It's just a matter of time.
Joanne Deni is a woman who gets results from flirting. She even tries it on with police officers on those occasions that she's arrested.
Amazing.
Looks good.
Thanks, Matt. That makes it so good. Real sexy.
Which puts a man called Lukasz Slabaziewski way out of his comfort zone. Back home in Poland, the text he's just received may have triggered an alarm. Too good to be true, perhaps. But in England, his guard is down. It's from Joanne Deni, enticing him to her place for no strings attached sex.
He was completely fooled, which isn't a surprise because by this stage in her life, she's got men at her beck and call. It's something that she uses very much to play on her sexuality to attract men.
Lukasz is attracted to Deni. He has no idea who he's dealing with.
Women tend not to become serial killers. Lukasz had happened upon a woman who longed to be one.
Will she kill him? She might. Hers is an exclusive club.
She's one of only 3 women that are convicted in the UK of serial murder.
What is to be her decision the day that she sends him the come to bed message? She considers his fate, strokes her knife. She's excited, a woman who literally has a lust for blood. Lukasz is about to discover what goes on inside the mind of a serial killer. Joanne Deni knew the big skies and rich fields of England's flatlands. Knowledge of the fen's remote ditches was useful too. Drop a body in one and it could lie undetected for a long time. She's been collecting intelligence like this for over a decade. It was here her grisly story began to unfold. Too late to save the lives of 3 men.
Each of the men she attacked had inadvertently triggered in her a desire to kill.
Joanne Deni takes offence easily, and if she does, no man is safe.
They'd said something she didn't like or looked at her in a way she thought disrespectful, so she would kill them.
At first, she chose to attack men who displeased her, but soon dropped the pretense. She selects an arbitrary criteria for knifing any man she sees. Dog walking.
She approached 2 men in the street who were walking their dog and in broad daylight attacked them with a large knife.
She stabbed 5 men, each a frenzied attack, before finally she was caught and captured on camera, happily chatting to arresting officers.
Attempted murder and Who was? A big fat black dog.
You see the level of bravado and narcissism. She's standing in front of the clerk for murder, for taking people's lives, an attempted murder. And she gloats and says, well, yeah, at least I'm not fat or ugly. It's this, last attempt to kind of seem that I'm the one that's in control. I know what I'm doing here and no one's going to rock my confidence.
Joanne Deni occupies a rare place in the history of serial killers. A young mother from a loving family. She got a kick out of killing. Someone has to be a serial killer's first. Would it be Lukas Slabaziewski? He's in Peterborough, England in March 2013. Soon, he plans to return to his native Poland.
He is getting casual work at this point. His sister lives in London, building a career, and he's come over to see what he can find. His is not a settled world. He has no permanent home. At 31, he is yet to start his own family. He is a happy man. His sister describes him as the joker of the family. At this point in his life, he has no responsibilities, so he is drifting, really.
It is now he comes across Deni. Both are in the area finding work and then renting rooms where they can. She and Lukas have flirted a little. He finds it flattering. She returns his wisecracks, encourages him.
She was setting him up in a particular way. She was sending him flirtatious texts. She was asking him to come to her home.
It certainly looks like she was grooming Lukas, tempting him, trying to win his confidence.
He believed there was potential for a relationship. She, on the other hand, was just luring him into a trap.
She springs the trap on a grey March day. Her latest message gets to the point. Lukas is in no doubt what's on offer. He sets off to the address that Joanna has given him. Lukas has a transient lifestyle, not working full-time, no family strings, miles from home. He has time on his hands. A random series of text messages from someone he's just met may appear odd to some, but to him, they appear perfectly normal. Maybe this English girl just fancies him. On receiving her text, Lukas sends a message to a friend. Life, he says, is beautiful. In fact, he's in a very dangerous place.
Deni can sense his vulnerability at this point. He has nothing else to do but come and see her. He will be alone. She will be ready.
You've got this situation where on the one hand you have someone wondering about whether or not they're going to have sex, and you have someone else wondering about whether or not they're going to kill the other person.
Deni was making up her mind. How far will she go with her violent fantasies?
She later told friends that she wanted to know just how cold she was. She admits knowing that she cannot feel for other people.
Lukas reads the text message one last time. Today is going to be fun. What had made Joanne Deni the woman she had become by 2013? An aimless 31-year-old mother of 2 drifting from bedsit to bedsit. As a child, she was a model daughter, not displaying any hint of psychopathic tendencies.
For many serial killers, you begin to see very early on that they're not engaging with their surroundings, that there's difficulties, that they're harming perhaps animals, or they're taking comfort in the hurt of other people. This wasn't the case for her.
If you look at her childhood, it would appear to be trauma-free and relatively normal.
She, as evidenced by reports from her sister and her parents, was a very happy, engaged young girl, at least till the age of 13.
There were simply no signs of what was to come. At 12, she was enthusiastic at sports and good in class.
In fact, she was a really good student, so good that her parents were paying for extra tuition to ensure that she was able to reach her goal of becoming a lawyer.
So we have a normal, achieving, caring, functioning 12-year-old, and then it all changes.
And then at 15, there is a dramatic change in her character.
She skips school, hangs out with a group of older boys.
She's abusing drugs, she's abusing alcohol, she's sexually active, and by the time she's 16, she's actually moved out of the house and is living with an older man.
Who could have known she would become such a troubled adolescent?
There's clear indications that Joanne Deni had a drink and drug problem, but there's also clear indications that she had other kinds of mental illness and was known to the local psychiatric service from a relatively young age. So it's quite clear that there was a combination of drink and drugs and to a degree mental illness that was influencing her behaviour.
For money, Joanne gets casual work on farms, but she develops an expensive dependency on alcohol. Her boyfriend knows that some days she asks to be paid in booze, and he sees what it does to her.
Alcohol makes Joanna extremely violent. So we know that even in this first relationship, whenever she's under the influence of drugs or alcohol, she becomes very aggressive. She'll beat him up. She'll become very violent towards him.
By now aged 22, the transformation from Deni the conforming child to Deni the threatening, dysfunctional adult is all but complete.
Well, all the evidence would suggest that Joanne Deni is deceitful, irresponsible, impulsive, lacking in remorse and empathy, and completely focused on her own needs. They are all the traits of psychopathy.
Some of her friends recall strange sexual habits. She would take out her own knife, hold it to her throat, and matters escalated.
She was a self-harmer. She would cut her stomach and arms whilst having sex.
People around her are identifying her behavior as really problematic. So her partner is frightened of her, and they have 2 children now, and he takes the children with him and gets full custody and goes as far away as he can.
Years of erratic sadomasochistic behaviour follow as Deni moves from low-rent bedsit to down-at-heel room, picking up odd jobs, turning to prostitution, and eventually being arrested for violent behaviour. She will be diagnosed with a psychotic condition.
She in fact has a sexual paraphilia where she enjoys sadomasochism. That's not only inflicting pain on herself, but actually inflicting pain on others and getting real pleasure from that.
This was the woman who Lukas Slabaziewski considered as simply the frisky girl who sent come-to-my-bed text messages, the wild English woman who offers sex acts should he come over. He's outside her door when he sends a reply.
Anyone would deduce, looking at the text messages sent, that she was luring him into a trap, and that clearly suggests that she had, to a degree, premeditated what she intended to do.
Premeditated, a key turning point in her story, a cold, rational set of decisions to make something happen, to lure a man to her side. But what else has she planned? So far, she's never killed.
From what we know, the only person she has turned her knife on was herself, as she self-harmed. She always has it with her, even when having sex. And some of her partners do say she was very scary to be with.
It is cold as she opens the door to Lukas. She beckons him in. He looks at her, perhaps spotting for the first time the star tattoo she has beneath her right eye. Behind her back, her favourite knife. Their eyes meet. Life for Lukas is so exciting in England. Will Joanne Deni use the knife that she has sharpened endlessly, hour after hour, on an unsuspecting man? He thinks he's struck lucky with the woman who he has known for just a few days. Would he have considered himself lucky if he knew of her past?
Almost exactly a year before this moment, a psychiatrist had diagnosed Deni as having an antisocial personality disorder and an obsessive-compulsive disorder.
Deni weighs up what to do. Have sex or kill the man? Or both?
Lukas is in a world of danger, and there are no warning signals.
Joanne Deni is a woman that thrives on confrontation And the natural follow-on for that is that she actually enjoyed the physical element of the violence that she inflicted on the men and the control she was able to inflict on these men.
She was immensely powerful. She had actually worked as an enforcer for loan sharks. Joanna Deni is strong.
Lucas sees the knife. Too late. She strikes.
She plunged the knife into his chest.
Deni's habit when knifing her victim was to smile. The last thing Lucas Suzuki will have seen would have been the grinning face and demented eyes of his killer. He died almost immediately. 31-year-old Lucas had come to England to learn the language, earn money to send home to his mother and have some fun. His guard down, he had become the perfect victim for Joanne Deni. Her honey trap had worked. She knew it would. She had a way with men.
She had no problem attracting men. From her school days, they would bend to her will. Older boys in the same school, slightly older men she would come across, they would all do her bidding.
It was time to call on one of the Deni men for help. She needs a little muscle to get rid of the body of Lucas Suzuki. The first of her go-to male followers that she considers is Gary Stretch. When Deni had met him, Stretch was in the same drifter's world as hers. He's a giant, standing over 7 feet 3 inches tall. At one point in his life, things had appeared normal. He had married, been a genuinely devoted father. He had issues. His real name was Gary Richards, and he suffered from gigantism. He grew beyond 7 feet. He adopted the name Stretch as a strategy to deflect constant teasing. He became a petty thief and eventually split from his wife. But Stretch was no criminal mastermind. He'd once burgled an office only to steal a single chocolate, also leaving behind his fingerprints, leading to his arrest.
There is something absurd about Gary Stretch. She quickly spots a potential accomplice, a willing volunteer in her life.
The pair make an unlikely couple. Stretch almost certainly feels wanted, needed. He's very self-conscious.
There's evidence to suggest that he was actually really insecure, not only about his height, but also his looks and his intelligence.
His almost pathetic devotion can be seen in letters that he wrote to her whilst both were behind bars. He tells her she'll never meet another man like him, that she can always count on him. Stretch becomes a classic Deni poodle, answering to her commands.
In fact, his own lawyer described him as a nodding dog. He said by the end of his relationship with Joanna, whatever she said, he did without question.
I think Stretch was working as a minder in many respects for Deni. She trusted him, she helped him, and there was some sort of mutual agreement between them.
You'd think that, because of his size, he'd be kind of very domineering and dominating, but in fact, not at all. He's actually very malleable. It may be that he's actually overcompensating for his size.
In his later letters, Stretch signs himself as Deni's undertaker. He has every reason to.
So once she's killed Lucas, she gets Stretch to help put him in a bin, and she's proud of this.
She used those men as her removal men, for want of a better expression, to help her dispose of the bodies, which quite clearly was her way of manipulating them and involving them in a crime in the hope that they would, by being complicit, not speak.
Don't forget that, a big part of the high of killing is to let people know that you've done that. There's an exhibitionist element, certainly in Joanna's case. And so she calls over a teenage friend, lifts the top of the bin up and says, "Hey, look what I've done."
She was focused on the notoriety that her actions would give her in time. So there's that element of wanting to be seen as bad and scary and really dangerous, which is part of her character.
The body went undiscovered. Lucas would regularly go days without contacting his sister in London or his parents in Poland. Nobody he loved knew he was dead. For now, he remained discarded in a large domestic refuse bin. A teenage friend and Gary Stretch bent to Dennehy's will, saying nothing.
She was a woman that was very focused on control, very focused on control of men in her life, and she used her sexuality to help her control those men.
The next of the men under her spell is Kevin Lee. On release from prison for an earlier offence, Dennehy is homeless. She tours Peterborough looking for a room, and she comes across a lettings agency run by Kevin Lee. He unwittingly enables the next killing chapter of her life story. But would he also become a Dennehy target? She asks him for help finding a place to stay.
Lee's business partner did not like the look of her and recommended that they decline the business to let her find her own place to live.
Dennehy owned up to having just got out of jail and said that she needed somewhere to start a new life. Played the sympathy card.
Lee was impressed by Dennehy's honesty. He fell under her spell, if you like.
The couple began an affair. Later, Dennehy would say that she found Lee's advances unwelcome, but in reality, she encouraged them.
The only reason Joanne Dennehy was involved in seeing Kevin Lee was that he enabled her to have access to properties and basically supplied her with accommodation.
So she uses her tried and tested techniques for enticing men to do this. She uses her sexuality. She meets an estate agent who she begins to sleep with.
So it was a mutually advantageous relationship. She supplied him with sex, he supplied her with accommodation.
Kevin Lee quickly found his new lover unsettling, scary.
He told a friend that she was a cross between a character in the film Kill Bill and the Terminator. Violent, aggressive, armed. She was a frightening person to be around.
But the relationship continues. She gets a job helping Kevin Lee in the letting business. Her presence was so intimidating that she was sent to make bad payers part with their rent. Throughout this time, she moves from one bedsit to another. After killing Lucas, she moves to another house where a man called Leslie Layton lives. He too will become a Dennehy man in time. For now, she's focused on still another man she's come across, John Chapman. Chapman knows about violent death. As a young man, he had served as a sailor, seeing active duty in the Falkland Islands for the Royal Navy. At 56, he was no longer the fit, fighting man that he had been. His dependency on alcohol rendered him very vulnerable.
He was a man that was living in the same home as her.
The pair shared a bathroom in the house. One day, the door slightly ajar, Dennehy thought she saw, as she bathed, Chapman glance in her direction. He may have done, he may not have done. But Dennehy had chosen her next victim. On the evening of Good Friday, March 29th in 2013, Chapman took drugs. He also drank high-strength alcohol. He was soon in no state to defend himself.
Apparently was drunk, unconscious, and that really suggests that she just completely disliked the man and that she felt an overwhelming need to kill, and he was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Chapman was like a lamb to the slaughter, still conscious, but only just.
Dennehy waited until her housemate was drowsy, lying prone on a sofa in the grubby lounge that the two shared. Was he about to become victim number 2 of a serial killer? John Chapman lies on a sofa, barely, if at all, awake. Dennehy attacks.
She used the same knife as the one she had killed Lukash with. She stabs Chapman. He stood no chance. Somewhere in his shocked, addled mind, he probably knew enough to realize that he was dying.
Within seconds, Joanne Deni has taken the life of victim number 2. She stabs Chapman in the neck, then 5 times in the chest. Hers is a wild, merciless, bloodthirsty attack.
Someone that uses a knife, it's very savage. There's normally a lot of blood, and someone that repeatedly stabs someone, that would be a frenzied attack, consistent with a huge amount of violence and trauma.
Again, she needs help from her growing band of male assistants.
She has such little value for life. One of the comments made by the police is that when she kills again, she calls up Gary Stretch, and her words are something to the effect of, "Oops, I did it again." And that's how she lets him know that she's got another kill that she needs help with cleaning up.
Deni and Stretch call on the help of Dennehy's other housemate, Leslie Layton, another social misfit living in a world of drugs and drink, another man in Dennehy's thrall. When he saw the body, Leslie Layton displayed his own contempt for human life.
Layton got his phone and took a photograph of the body, a trophy to show his friends, perhaps, or a big moment to look back on when he was bored. Layton had become yet another man in Dennehy's thrall, but he was already a damaged man.
As with the murder of Lukasz, Dennehy had chosen a victim that few would mourn or miss. Chapman also lived in the world of misfits, no job, no close family, few real friends, drink his companion. Indeed, when news eventually filtered out of his death, those that knew him sprinkled high-strength cider near the door of his home as a tribute. But in the immediate hours after his death, nobody was looking for his killer. The three moved both bodies into the countryside east of Peterborough. They were discarded in one of the open ditches which crisscrossed the English fenlands, the ones Dennehy knew so well. What was going on inside the mind of the serial killer, Joanne Dennehy? She's excited. She finds the whole episode invigorating.
She likes the smell, the essence of blood. This is something that she boasts about when she's interviewed, but more than that, she actually never washes her knife. She likes the idea of having the blood on it, of smelling it, of reliving the situation. So for her, it literally is a story of bloodlust.
And a lust which is not sated.
She wants to kill again.
And to kill again immediately. She returns to the house where she has killed Lukasz and sends a trail of text messages to entice her next victim. Dennehy has an audience to her grisly show. The men that she has surrounded herself with are now aware that she's a double killer. Far from worrying her, far from suspecting they may turn her in, she feels she's impressing them.
There is something else going on here that we see with multiple murderers throughout time, the concept of folie à deux. Dennehy's cohorts, the men in her life, become an audience. Whether they know it or not, they become people she wants to impress. She is killed, they show her respect. She must kill again to keep that respect.
Those who later analysed Dennehy's behaviour also tell of another motivation for murder: sexual. She's getting turned on.
When she would masturbate, she would cut herself. So this association between violence and sex, between knives and pain and cutting and sex, is something very, very upmost in her mind, something that she gets a high off of. So we know that she gets a sexual high off of killing.
Dennehy only targets men as both victims and friends. Given the bisexuality that she freely talks of, is this further evidence of a key motivating factor for her deeds?
There are many, too many, examples of men who kill women because they hate them, a hatred caused by repressed sexuality. There are very few cases where women become serial killers for the same reason, but that may be what has happened in the case of Joanna Dennehy.
It is March 30th, 2013, and Joanne Dennehy has now killed twice. Who would be next? Kevin Lee, her boss and lover, is another man bent to the will of Joanne Dennehy. Unlike Lukasz Suzuki, who was separated from his family and homeland, or John Chapman, who drifted into a netherworld of alcohol abuse, Lee has a loving family nearby. His letting business is at the low rent end of the market. Occasionally there can be trouble, bad payers, nuisance behaviour. That, it seems, is why he likes Joanne Dennehy. She would sort out the tenants in arrears. That, and the sex that she offers him.
And in return, she got a place to live and another man at her beck and call.
If control is what she seeks, that's certainly something that she has. At this point in her life, she's got absolute control over 3 men. She clicks her fingers and they come running.
With Lee, there was something else motivating him.
As well as enjoying the easy, no-strings, often exotic sex he had with Deni, he felt genuine compassion for her.
Would he pay the price of an error of judgment? After killing John Chapman, Deni went shopping for booze. When she returns, Deni sends another text message to Kevin Lee. Will he meet her at her old bedsit? Lee reads the message and tells a colleague that he's going out. What had the text said? He tells his friends. Joanna says she's going to dress me up as a woman and rape me. She's done this before. It's one of a series of highly sexualized messages that he receives which display the unusual, often extreme sexual demands that Deni would make and which intrigue Kevin Lee. Each time this has happened in the past, they would have sex. But each time, she would consider killing him. He leaves his office. It is 2 o'clock. How could Kevin Lee be so gullible? If he was not alone.
Over and over again, she'll put it out there and say to men, come over, I want to have sex with you.
It works every time. She needs Gary Stretch. She calls him and he comes running. She wants Leslie Layton to run an errand. He's just a message away.
And she does this with the letting agent. He comes over, normally they have sex, normally it goes fine, he leaves, but on this one occasion, she takes it that step further.
Now she has Kevin Lee also doing her bidding.
She is alone in the house where just 4 days earlier, Deni had killed Lukasz Suzuki. Always with her, a knife, constantly sharp. She makes sure of that. Kevin Lee is en route. She may have sex with him. She may kill him. Which will it be? Kevin Lee drives to the house on this estate in Peterborough. It is broad daylight. Behind the net curtains, locked doors, closed windows, nobody in the neighbourhood has any idea that a man has already been murdered in one of the houses and that another life, that of Kevin Lee, hangs in the balance. Deni opens the door, beckons her lover inside, then stabs him 5 times. Unlike her other victims, the first cuts were not enough to completely subdue Kevin Lee. He fights back, but nothing could save him from Deni's savagery.
By this point in her story, Joanna's out of control. She's actually wanting to kill. She's on a killing high.
Outside, life goes on. Normal people doing normal things. The community oblivious, as applying the same savagery as she had done twice before, Deni repeatedly stabs Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee had known Joanne Deni for just a few months. In that time, she had become his lover, killed 2 men, and now she has killed him.
The men that Joanne Deni killed were men that were in her life, and there were men that were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. When you look at the first man that she killed, he was really just a potential suitor. You look at the second man that she killed, he was a man living in the house, the same house where she was lodging. And if you look at the third man that she killed, he was her lover. So they were just men that were part of her life that were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Chillingly, amongst her motives, pleasure.
When you overlay the fact that she had a sexual interest in sadomasochistic sex, one is drawn to a conclusion that she may have got some sexual pleasure or arousal from the murder of these men.
As the life of her victim ebbed away, Deni was already planning her next step. She had 2 bodies to get rid of on 2 houses on a densely populated housing estate. She needs her men.
She summons Gary Stretch and Leslie Layton to the house and orders them to help get rid of the bodies. They simply comply.
As Stretch cleans up the blood, Deni did as she had promised with Kevin Lee. Dressed him up in her clothes, committed further acts to his body.
Even in death, she wanted to humiliate him as well.
Leslie Layton, meanwhile, was getting rid of Kevin Lee's car, just as instructed. before all three drive deep into the countryside and dump Kevin Lee's body in a ditch, deliberately positioning it so his rear was exposed.
The contempt that she has for her victims is evidenced by the way that she disposes of them. In this one case, she puts this guy in a ditch and goes out of her way to expose him. She exposes his backside, leaves him there. It's a bit of a joke for her. It's just something that she does. This person is not really a person. It's a means to an end.
Deni needs a place to hide out. She is certain, and she is right, that someone will stumble across the bodies. It was time to enlist yet another man to her cause. Robert Moore had earlier allowed a tarpaulin from his home to be used to wrap around the body of John Chapman. Now he will provide a safe house.
Robert Moore is another man in her life that she's able to control. She needs help. She just puts out a phone call to him. He comes. He helps. No questions asked.
Moore provides Deni and Stretch's home to hide out for 2 more days. After laying low for 48 hours, moving to another hideout, Deni and Stretch set off for Hereford, a border town between Wales and England. Stretch knew the place. The couple burgle a house in a remote area nearby and hook up with local criminals to offload their stolen goods. They then pick up a minor local criminal, Mark Lloyd, who knew nothing of the murders, and asked him to help them navigate their way around Herefordshire. At first, he allows himself to be swept up in the mania of the day, posing for photographs. He goes shopping with Deni. The couple captured on security cameras entering a store, acting perfectly naturally. Positively jovial, almost intimate. They both flirt with the assistant. Deni compliments her on her figure, asks her to spin around so she can admire it. Then they leave.
There's some CCTV footage of her going into a shop and just talking with a girl behind the counter and saying, you know, you look pretty, turn around, and the girl's turning around. It just seems like this really normal interaction. And it's testament to how cool she was about this. For her, killing wasn't something to be concerned with or worried about. This was something that's going to give her a high. This was a bit of fun. This was, for her, nothing more than enjoying a day out. This wasn't about the victim. This was about her enjoying the pain that she was going to inflict. And she could do that and at the same time speak to people and giggle and just have a good time.
The latest man that she has enrolled into her cause is to be dumbfounded at what happens next. Deni has not killed for days. She wants to rectify that. As they cruise around an area of this quiet market town, she issues Stretch with an instruction. 3 murders are not enough. She wants to kill again and again, to have some fun. She has a hero to emulate.
Quite clearly, she was focused on killing these men in a very short time period. And there is a suggestion that she was keen on the notoriety that would bring her, and there was some suggestion that she was focused on the 9 murders committed by Bonnie and Clyde.
She told Stretch it was time she had some fun. He was to stop the next time that he saw a man walking a dog.
That's it. I want to kill somebody with a dog. That's what I'm going to do. And so she gets in a car and she's literally looking around for a person with a dog to kill.
Robin Bereza is a retired fireman. He likes to keep fit. That day, he decided at the last moment not to go on his usual jogging route, but instead to walk the dog.
The first person she spots with a dog, she jumps out of the car and she starts stabbing him. Now, this man survives, but while she's stabbing him, he stops and he says, "Why? Why are you doing this to me?" Her response is very simple. "Because I can. I want you to die."
Stretch provides her getaway car. Robin Bereza survived, but was badly hurt, physically and emotionally scarred for life. He had been the victim of a random attack. Deni was not finished. Her target not dead. Only killing satisfies her now.
So she goes on the hunt again.
Another man walking his dog, John Rogers, comes into view of Deni and her sidekick Stretch. Again, he cruises up behind her target, and again she attacks. She stabs him repeatedly in the back. He falls and she stabs him in the chest, again, over and over, 30 times in all. Deni grabs his dog, runs back to the car.
She was convinced this poor man was dead, and that is the only reason she ran away.
John Rogers survived, but was never the same man again and died from an unconnected illness later that year. Within an hour, Deni and Stretch were captured.
Clearly, if she'd not been arrested when she was, there would have been other people attacked on that day in the same way.
It was time for Deni to seize the centre stage. In front of officers, she gloated, flirted with the desk sergeant.
You're very distinct to my ride, isn't it? It's all right.
Yeah, I'll pluck them.
Go right up.
It's all
It's a real strip driver.
It is all routine to a woman who has killed 3 times and tried to kill another 2 times. She is vain, doesn't want to be placed in a police suicide suit.
Suicide suit. Shorts and massive. Yeah. Paper suits.
They are shorts.
Wrap them around the time.
For most people, her actions are incomprehensible, but these scenes when she's arrested take our understanding of Joanna Dennehy to a new level. She has absolutely no sense of remorse.
In police interviews, Dennehy at first has nothing to say about the murders.
Did you murder Lushkash Slavijeski?
No comment.
Did you murder Kevin Lee?
No comment.
Did you murder John Chapman?
No comment.
Without her trial, surrounded in court, she seizes her moment, pleads guilty.
It's like she's proud of what she's done. She's taking her metaphorical bow. She's enjoying what she sees as her applause.
Joanne Dennehy admitted to finding killing Moorish.
It's rare to come across female serial killers, but I think with Joanna Dennehy, just the level of contempt that she had for human life, the level of just joy that she took out of inflicting pain and harm, I think arguably make her one of the worst female serial killers that we know of.
As for the men in her life who survived, the judge said that he accepted that Gary Stretch was under the thrall of Dennehy, but still gave a sentence of life with a minimum 19 years to be served before parole is considered. Leslie Layton was given 14 years for his offence. Robert Moore was also described by the judge as being under a spell cast by Dennehy. He was given 3 years in prison. As for Dennehy herself, the judge was scathing in his observations of her conduct, sentencing her to a full life tariff. She will never be released from prison.
I think there's a danger in overthinking the way in which Joanne Dennehy selected her victims. I think that she wasn't that particularly focused on who they were. They were just men in the wrong place at the wrong time.